Recording started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our virtual Coyote Talk here in San Francisco. We're waiting for a few more folks to arrive, so be patient and we'll start the presentation very soon. And yes, we have a question from Donna. The presentation is being recorded and we will have it on our website tomorrow, Animal Care and Control. At the end of this webinar, we're going to have a link to our website and all sorts of information about how you can communicate with us about coyotes. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay, let's get started. Again, welcome to our virtual Coyote Talk. This is a collaboration between Animal Care and Control, Recreation and Parks Department, and Project Coyote. So first of all, you're going to be hearing a presentation from Kelly Hendricks from Project Coyote, and then a presentation from Deputy Director Amy Corso from San Francisco Animal Care and Control. Then we're going to have a Q&A, so you may have questions for Project Coyote, Animal Care and Control, or Rec and Park. We also have Christopher Campbell from Rec and Park, you can see right there. And we're all ready to answer whatever questions you have about coyotes. So, Kelly, I'd like to introduce Kelly and we'll get started. Thanks for being here, Kelly.
No problem. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Everybody? Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Kelly Hendricks. Thanks everybody for joining today. We got a lot of information to cover, so let's just get started. So I'm just going to give you a little of my background. I'm the Ranching with Wildlife Coordinator for Project Coyote. For those of you that don't know, Project Coyote, we're a national nonprofit. We're based in Marin, but we work nationally, and we promote compassionate coexistence between people and wildlife using education, science, and advocacy. And we advocate for all native carnivores. even though coyotes are a flagship species. So my husband and I are predator-friendly ranchers, and we live and work on a ranch where my husband's managed the cow-calf operation for over 25 years. And over those years, we've calved out thousands of calves without the use of any lethal controls around mountain lions and coyotes and all sorts of predators. And I'm a longtime volunteer with Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. I used to work in the hospital and also as a feeder, and now I primarily foster orphaned wildlife babies so that they can be returned to the wild. And these are some of my babies I've fostered over the years. And I'm vice president of Little Trooper Ranch, and we're a dog rescue in Sonoma County. And we work with primarily small dogs, and we rescue them, rehabilitate them, and find them loving homes. And finally, I'm on the Sonoma County Fish and Wildlife. I serve on the commission. And the reason why I tell you all this is because a lot of people think when I give these presentations, I'm just some, some coyote freak. I just love coyotes, and I do love coyotes, but I have interest in keeping animals safe on both sides of the fence. I care about the domestic animals, the livestock, and the wildlife. So I'm hoping today to give you a lot of information to help you learn how to coexist with coyotes. And part of that is giving you a little bit of background about their behaviors and lifestyles. So coyote packs are just families. And within that family, the mom and the dad, which we call the alpha pair, are the only ones that breed. And all the rest of the family members are what we call behaviorally sterile, meaning they won't breed as long as they're part of that pack. And what's important to know about coyote packs is they're territorial. Because I hear a lot certain times a year, they may see more coyotes together than they've seen before, and they'll worry that they're overpopulating. But the interesting thing about predators is that their populations are self-regulating. And one of the ways they self-regulate is through their territorial natures. They won't tolerate others of their species within their territories. So in the case of coyotes, they won't accept any outside coyotes within their territories. Coyotes also mate for life, and they're monogamous. They're one of only 5% of mammals that do so, so that's pretty cool. And all the family members help raise the new pups. So the new pups of the year, the older siblings will help raise them, the fathers, everybody. So obviously they have very strong family bonds. So their lifestyle is really important to understand conflicts and how to prevent them and what they're doing certain types of years. So in winter, right now is their mating season. So you might hear more vocalizations. You might see more coyotes as they're looking for mates. Spring is when they give birth. Usually in California, it's around mid-April. And that's the only time of year they'll use the dens. Once the pups are weaned, they'll all live outside of the dens. And summer's when they're raising their pups, and you might see coyotes out during the daytime this time of year because they're working overtime to feed the babies. Fall we call the dispersal season, and that's when the older kids leave home to go out on their own. It can happen any time of year. We just traditionally say fall. That's the most common time. Litter sizes, they average 6 pups, but half won't survive the first year. So killing, a lot of times people that maybe aren't super fond of coyotes will say, I just don't want to deal with them. Why don't we just kill them? Well, unfortunately, killing doesn't work to manage their populations. In fact, it just causes more problems than it's worth. What tends to happen is, based on the way the coyotes' family structures are, if you have that stable pack of the alpha pair and then their babies of the year and their older babies, that's a stable pack. But if you start using lethal controls and one of those alphas are taken out, then all the adolescent coyotes can disperse and they can start breeding, and they'll breed at younger ages, have larger litters in which more pups survive. So the use of lethal controls might lower the population temporarily, but then it'll rebound into higher numbers. So that's why keeping stable packs and keeping them together is our best bet. Another common misconception about coyotes is people often think they're much bigger than they are. But in California, coyotes weigh just about 25 pounds. That's on average. In the eastern coyotes, they're about 10 pounds on average bigger. Coyotes are often compared to German shepherds, but German shepherds are about 3 times the size of coyotes. So, and the reason we often think they're bigger is if you look at these pictures on the right side of the screen, the picture on the lower end is a coyote with its winter coat. And those winter coats are about 5 inches thick. So it makes them look much larger than they are. And if you see the photo on top, that's a coyote in spring or in summer once their coats are gone, and they look much, much smaller. So it's important to know what coyotes eat, obviously. They're omnivores. They eat just about anything, but far and away, under most circumstances, rodents are by far their favorite food. And a single coyote can eat 1,800 rodents in a year. So having a pack around is an excellent source of free rodent control. They're scavengers, and so they'll eat roadkill and things like that, anything they can find sometimes. But in the studies, diet studies that have been done, pets are rarely consumed. So there's a long-running coyote study in Chicago, outside Chicago in Cook County, and it's been going on for over 20 years now, and they've collared hundreds of coyotes. And in that diet study, they showed that less than 3% of coyotes had signs of domestic pet in them. And there's been other studies done, one in Los Angeles, that showed about 10% of domestic pet in coyotes, which kind of makes sense because of the dense populations and a lot more feral cat colonies, things like that. And then there was one recently done in San Francisco, and I think Amy's going to tell us a little bit more about that later. But as you can see, they do get a hold of human sources of food, like this coyote with the pizza in its mouth, and it's not great. It's not good for them health-wise, and the other problem with it is that it tends to lead to conflicts with humans. Because in that same study I told you about in Chicago, every coyote that came into conflict with humans showed signs of being fed by humans. Every single one. So vocalizations are something that's super cool about coyotes, but are often understood. One of the things that's misunderstood is people hear them and think that there's a lot more coyotes around than there are because of something they can do called the bow jest effect. They can do this with their voice. It's a trick they can play. So it can make just 2 coyotes sound like a large pack. In fact, at the wildlife rescue, when we were doing the tours, before we brought them in, we'd get the coyotes howling and ask them how many coyotes they thought they heard. And they would think, a dozen? I'm like, nope, it's just a pair of coyotes. It's really a trick. And they vocalize to locate members and as a territorial marker to signal distress. But their howling is not related to hunting, even though, and I acknowledge this, when they are howling, it can sound like they're skinning a cat. It can sound definitely like something's dying. In fact, even my sister-in-law called me and said, the coyotes are killing something every night. It's like rabbits or cats. And I'm like, no, it just sounds like that. That's just them vocalizing. She didn't believe me till I sent her this video and she played it and she goes, oh yeah, no, you're right. That's the same exact sound. So I'm going to play you this video. And hopefully this audio will work and you'll be able to hear. And when they're vocalizing, it's actually in this howling, it's actually really cool to see because it's very joyful when you see the behaviors behind the video. It sounds very ominous, but the behaviors associated with the howling is actually really sweet. They're so excited to see each other. This video quality isn't very good, but the audio will give you. It's a little dark. once you see the behaviors behind the vocalizations, they sound much less ominous when you hear them in the future. So another thing I like to help people understand is how to speak Coyote, and that's just understanding their body language and what it means. So coyotes are individuals, like all animals, but the majority are big chickens. And at this point, I've handled a lot of coyotes in my time. When they come into the wildlife rescue, their body language is usually like the one you see in the top left, which is they just want to be invisible. They're very, very, very scared. We wear gloves, of course, but very few of them bite. Maybe 30% will try and bite. Now, the coyote you see on the top right that looks, very aggressive, that's the posture they take when there's off-leash dogs chasing them, or they have a den site nearby that they're trying to protect. And the whole idea is for them to look very vicious and mean. But they don't really back it up with much. Of course, if you have small dogs, the coyotes can look at them as prey, but large dogs, they generally want to avoid. Conflicts they come in with large dogs is mostly coyotes trying to drive them out of their territories. And they usually do that kind of the way that border collies move sheep, just by biting at their hind end to try to move them along. The coyote on the bottom left, a lot of times people get nervous when they see a coyote watching them or their dog as they're walking, and the coyotes will just stare at you. And sometimes they'll even follow from behind and follow people from behind, and people take that as being stalked or something like that. And it's really not. It's a behavior that's called escorting, and it's a natural behavior where coyotes just like to know that anything entering their territory is going to be leaving it. So in a situation where an coyote is escorting you, it's best to, if you have an off-leash dog, put it on the leash. If you have a small dog, pick it up and just calmly walk out of the area. The picture on the lower right is an animal rescue person that does a lot of field rescues, and that coyote is not tranquilized. It's just one she just pulled from a fence. I think it was stuck in a fence. You can see she's wearing gloves, but that's about how hard they are to handle. When we're working on, we put a towel over their head, basically just lay frozen. So they're not as badass as they want everybody to believe. So here's a video of a coyote messaging a dog, an off-leash dog. And I believe this is taken during spring, so I have a feeling there was a den site nearby. And that bark that coyote is doing is a vocalization they use to signal distress when they're upset about something, essentially. But you can see how he just bit at the ankles of that dog to try to drive it away. And that's what they'll do to bigger animals when they're trying to get them out of their territory. So now we're back to talking about feeding wildlife again. And as I said earlier, almost every coyote that is involved with conflicts with people and pets has been a coyote that's been fed. So, and sadly, there are people that intentionally feed coyotes. And if you know of anybody in your neighborhoods, or you see anybody that's intentionally feeding coyotes, you want to turn them into San Francisco Animal Care and Control so they can deal with it and speak to these people and encourage them to stop or cite them if they have to. But it can lead to so many problems. And it usually, we have a saying that a fed coyote is a dead coyote, because it never turns out good for the coyotes. Now, most coyotes that are fed are never going to get aggressive, but almost every coyote that gets aggressive is a coyote that's been fed. So it's really important that we don't do that. They can also be fed unintentionally by people at things like feral cat feeding stations when the cats are fed on the ground. That can be a big problem for all wildlife, skunks, raccoons, everything. So what we try to encourage people to do is build raised feeding platforms for feral cats. And the one you see on the top middle is an example of that. And that apron around the bottom is an aluminum apron to prevent raccoons from accessing it. So that's a great option to keep wildlife out of feral cat feeding stations. Another thing that I try to get people to do that are managing feral cat colonies is to only feed morning, late morning, only as much as the cats will eat in an hour or two or while you're there. And that's it. So there's not food laying around all day. And as far as homes go, you want to clean up under your bird feeders because those seeds will attract rodents, which attract coyotes, and the seeds itself can attract the coyotes. Not leave pet food out. Keep up your trash and compost neatly and put away. Clean up under fruit trees. Coyotes love fruit and so do rodents. So if you have a lot of fruit on the ground from fruit trees, those will attract rodents and coyotes. You want to keep your landscaping clean and neat, not overgrown, and give it places in your yard where coyotes can hide. They don't like to be exposed. So if there's less places for them to hide, there's less chance you'll have coyotes. And if you have backyard ponds or coops, if you have ponds, you want to keep the water deep enough where the fish can hide and put in hides for the fish in the water. And in a perfect world, you'd have a grate to put on it at night. And coops, they have to be predator proof. And if you want more information on ponds and coops and keeping backyard animals like this safe, this is a little beyond the scope of tonight's presentation, but you can contact me and I'll be happy to give you more information about that. So to give you an idea of how impactful feeding coyotes is to their behavior, there's a study in Rhode Island where they collared coyotes, and the graph on the top right shows pings of where the coyotes were. The blue pings are nighttime sightings and the red pings are daytime pings. And they started having conflicts at those two hotspots that you see. And they went and found out that someone was intentionally feeding at both of those spots. And they talked to those people, they cited them, they had them stop. And 2 weeks later, you'll see the graph on the lower left. And that, well, the coyotes are howling out here right now. That's funny. The bottom left shows the graph 2 weeks later, no pings from those coyote callers. I wish you guys could hear this. They're really singing out here right now. So what this means is the most effective way to remove coyotes is to remove attractants. Really works like a charm. So are coyotes dangerous? Turns out as people, we're not very good at risk assessment. We seem to overestimate the amount of danger things that aren't that dangerous are to us and underestimate the things that are dangerous. And part of that problem, I think, stems from the media because, you know, there's a saying in journalism that dog bites man is not a story, but man bites dog is the story. Meaning if you've got some outlandish thing happen, that's going to sell newspapers. And so when dogs bite people, you really don't hear about it. But if a coyote bites a person, it makes national news, even though in all of North America, on average, coyotes bite about 20 people a year. That's in all of North America. And most of those are very superficial. Whereas dog bites in just the United States bite 4.5 million people a year. 1,500 people go to emergency rooms every year for dog bites. A lot of them are very serious, in other words. And I don't tell you this to make you scared of dogs, just to show that risk assessment wise, coyotes are not much of a danger to humans. Now, our pets obviously are more vulnerable to coyotes. So we have to wonder how dangerous are they? So when you talk to vets, they say that the most common cause of injury are for animals within their care are foreign bodies, ingestion of foreign bodies, and then hit by cars, dog fight wounds, and cat fight wounds. So the pets are far more dangerous to our pets than wildlife are. So just something to think about. And while we're on this subject, there's a myth that I want to dispel, and that is that coyotes don't lure dogs back to a pack to be eaten. A lot of people think that it's false. They think that a coyote in heat goes and lures dogs back to a pack to be eaten, but there's no scientific evidence to show that that's true. What does happen is off-leash dogs tend to chase coyotes, and coyotes hate to be chased. So that's a big, and when coyotes run from off-leash dogs, they tend to run back to their pack members, which may not to help them. And the second myth I want to dispel is that coyotes aren't disease ridden. Most of them are very healthy. And they are not a rabies vector species in California. So it's, in other words, they're not known carriers of rabies in California. So obviously, if you any animal, you want to wash the wound right away and get treated and go to a doctor if needed. But as far as just because you see a coyote out during the day doesn't mean it's rabid, because they're not even known carriers in California. Now, mange obviously is something that coyotes in California have battled quite a bit. And I know that San Francisco Animal Care and Control is going to talk about that a little bit more. So I won't go into it much here, but overall, their populations are very healthy. So management options. How can we get along with coyotes better? Well, there's no quick fix. So that's important to understand. And but the good news is it's all in our control. So, but a lot of people say that they don't, why don't we just move them? Why don't we just take coyotes and put them somewhere in the wild where they're more comfortable and a better place for them? But there's not really spots like that around, and the spots where there's any good coyote habitat are already have coyotes in them. So, and it's illegal in California to relocate wildlife for many good reasons. You can orphan dependent young. Most wildlife that are relocated don't last over 3 months because they get killed in territorial disputes or trying to come back to their old territories and being hit by cars. So and it's ineffective. So you can relocate an animal, but nature abhors a vacuum, and that that open territory will soon be filled with another coyote or raccoon or whatever you trapped and moved. And targeting and capturing so you say, well, there's just one problem coyote. Why can't we capture it and deal with that coyote? But they're almost impossible to cage trap. And that leaves you with using snares, and those are dangerous to domestic animals. And IDing the problem coyote is really difficult because coyotes look very much the same. So as you probably noticed, it's hard to tell them apart. So it's going to be a real struggle to figure out which coyote you're getting. So modifying human behaviors is usually the most effective option. And how we know this is true is we did the same thing with bears. Bears were a huge problem many years ago, probably before many of you were born. Bears were being fed in national parks, and they were getting euthanized commonly in conflicts with humans because they were such a pest. And they were breaking into cars, they were injuring people, they were raiding campgrounds. And then the National Park Service, everybody got together and started about teaching people how to live safely around bears and how to camp safely around bears, and why you shouldn't keep food in your cars, and why you shouldn't, using bear safe containers when you camp, and all those behavioral modifications that human used. And the amount of bears they had to euthanize was dropped significantly, and there was way fewer problems. So we want to use that same kind of education campaigns and direct them towards coyotes so we can prevent conflicts between coyotes and humans. So another way to prevent conflicts is to keep the coyotes' natural fear of humans instilled in them, because in urban areas, they get so used to seeing people and cars and traffic and noise that they can get a little, a little too blasé about being around people, a little too comfortable. So what we want to do when that happens is haze the coyotes and instill their natural fear of us. So when do you haze? You haze when a coyote approaches you, your pet, your home, or your yard. And how you do it is just acting big, bad, and loud. You want to continue acting big, bad, and loud until the coyote runs off. And the way you want to do this is by letting the coyote know that you're directing your energy towards that coyote. You make eye contact with it and then you yell, hey, you can slap your hand, you can slap your leg, you can raise your arms, you can carry a whistle around your neck and blow that. The most important part is to have the right energy. You want to have that real serious, aggressive energy to let them know that you mean it. You don't want to just be like, hey, coyote, you got to be serious about it. And you want to continue that because what's going to happen is that coyote is going to run off a little ways and then it's going to stop and it's going to look back on you and kind of just gauge whether you're serious or not. And that's the point where a lot of people think hazing doesn't work because then they give up. But when that coyote does that, then you just, hey, 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 go away, coyote, that. Continue until the coyote leaves the area. And you don't want to haze if coyote may be protecting pups or the coyote is just being respectful and being a coyote hunting in a field and it's not bothering anybody, or if it's sick or injured. So another important thing to address is how to avoid conflicts on walks. So the number one way to avoid on walks is leashes. Leashes prevent almost all conflicts with wildlife on walks. Coyotes rarely attack dogs on leashes. And practicing avoidance is another good way. If you don't want to have problems with coyotes, you can walk outside the times that you're likely to see coyotes, which is between dusk and dawn. You can walk in areas where there's not a lot of brush and natural areas where coyotes can hide. You can carry a deterrent, like if you look on the bottom right of your screen, you see storm whistles. And those are made to work in any kind of conditions like high winds, rain, things like that. You can carry a lanyard around your neck and you can blow those. They work really well. Or any kind of a deterrent, something, those personal alarms that you can put on your keychain that scream when you pull them. Those are great. I try to encourage people to think of their small pets as toddlers. You wouldn't let your little toddler run off far ahead of you when you're walking, and the same should be true as your pets. And to haze the coyotes if necessary. And I also light up collars and bells can work too. Coyotes are neophobic, meaning they're scared of new things in their environment. So if they see a dog that's jingling and lighting up, they're less likely to approach it. In that bottom left-hand part of the screen, you see a little dog wearing, I think they call those coyote vests. I think it's Kevlar or something. It's got the spikes on top. It's probably overkill, but hey, if you're really worried, that's a good option. And it also helps protect them from domestic dog attacks. So your yards are important things to make sure that are safe. And you want to do that by removing attractants. We've already discussed why that's so effective. And also there's products now like coyote rollers, which are awesome. And you can attach those if you have a solid fence about 5 feet or taller. You can put coyote rollers on the top and they work great. And they keep pets in yards too. And they do that by when animals jump fences, there's a part of the jump sequence that you can miss with your bare eye, but their feet will actually touch the top of the fence. And these coyote are just roll bars that roll them right back off the fence. And if you're worried about digging under, they now make a product called Dig Defense, which is just pre-cut sections of galvanized steel rods that you can just hammer right in the ground. And for cats, catios are a great option. That's just a predator-proof enclosure for cats so they can enjoy the outdoors. It can be as modest as the one you see here on the bottom left, or I've seen fancy ones that are nicer than the house I live in. So they're accessible for everybody. Lights are, motion sensor lights can help. I mean, usually urban coyotes are pretty used to lights, so a porch light coming on probably won't be a huge deterrent, but it can't hurt. The light for dogs that are going to be in yards at night, obviously you don't want to leave your dog overnight in a yard, but if they have to go outside to go potty at night, the light up collars and bells are a great option. And if coyotes are around your yard, haze them if necessary. So this is a short video that shows how those roll bars work. This one isn't the brand Coyote roller, it's another brand, but it'll show you how they work. So, or you can get yourself a guard animal. Some people sent me this from their trail camera in their yard. So apparently skunks make good guard animals. Who knew? So the takeaways are leashes. The number one way to keep your pet safe when outdoors is keep them on leashes. Supervise small pets and kids. And while I'm thinking about kids, it's important to remember to tell your kids never to run from dogs or predators like coyotes or any kind of animal. Number one, you can't outrun them anyways. And number two, even though most animals weren't even thinking about attacking, if they see something run, it can get their prey drive going and then cause them to chase. So you want to definitely teach them that. Secure your yard, wildlife, haze, coyotes. If necessary, have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can always contact us at Project Coyote. And I always like to finish up with a little video kind of showing some interesting coyote behaviors. This was taken by, oh shoot, I can't even think of the Open Trust, Peninsula Open Trust or something like that. It's at a culvert that's a wildlife crossing. They had a trail camera up and this is what they captured. So I think that's adorable. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over now to Amy from San Francisco Animal Care and Control. And stop my screen sharing. We'll turn it over to Amy.
Hi, everybody. I am Amy Corso, Deputy Director at San Francisco Animal Care and Control, and I'm just going to wait for my slides to pop up.
Sorry, I'm getting them popped.
Well, let me see if I can get started while we wait for that.
Sorry, Amy.
That's okay. Ah, here they go.
I think Kelly had to finish hers. Here we go.
Can you go to the second slide, please?
Oops, sorry.
Okay, so animal care and control and wildlife. As an open mission shelter, we work with all species of animals. Our animal control officers are on duty every day from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. When responding to wildlife, we respond to emergencies involving wildlife. This can be sick or injured wildlife, also incidents of public safety. So if we have, we also often have coyotes in the middle of a road. So officers will respond to that. We don't want a traffic accident. We respond to wildlife in garbage cans, wildlife stuck in fences. And we also keep records of all coyote observations and incidents. So we work in partnership with San Francisco Rec and Park, the Presidio Trust, National Park Service, also some other agencies and researchers. We have a monthly check-in where we talk about urban wildlife. We discuss hotspots, whether it's coyotes, raccoons, And, you know, we talk about what we're seeing. We talk about incidents of feeding. Next slide, please. And the next slide, you're going to see photos of some of the situations our wildlife finds themselves in. So we, San Francisco, have a wildlife feeding problem. Next slide, please, Deb. We have a lot of hotspots in San Francisco where people have reported feeding, lots of intentional feeding, but we also do see unintentional feeding. Kelly had mentioned some of this in her presentation. Unintentional feeding can look like feeding your pets outdoors and leaving the food outside. It could be feeding from your garbage cans when they're not secured. So feeding does cause a lot of problems with wildlife, and like Kelly said, the signs that say fed wildlife is dead wildlife is true. We see the animals that have been fed causing the problems. So if you do happen to see or know of any feeding, please report it to us. We will investigate. We will issue a warning. They don't, you know, follow that warning, then we will cite. It is a misdemeanor. It is illegal. Okay, next one, Deb. So recently, a PhD candidate from UC Davis, Tally Caspi, published a study where she had researched lots of scat from San Francisco's coyotes to see what are they eating. The thing that they consume the most in San Francisco is chicken provided by humans. So obviously we don't have wild chickens, so they're eating chicken, whether it comes in the form of the rotisserie chickens that we would see left at Bernal Heights Park, or lots of pet food, right? Lots of pet food has chicken in it. The second was gophers, which I'm sure many of us have seen them hunting for gophers in the city. The third most common was pork. And again, we don't have wild pigs running around the city. Next slide. So this year in particular, we've received a lot of calls about coyotes with mange and coyotes with injured rear legs. So ACC only picks up wildlife when animals are incapacitated. We do not trap or chase injured wildlife. Chasing them stresses them out. Probably won't catch these coyotes anyway. And we definitely don't want to chase them into traffic and cause a public safety issue. So if they can run from us, most likely they can survive. Next slide. So again, these are some things that Kelly touched on. Things you can do is keep your dogs on leash and cats indoors. Make sure your neighborhood isn't welcoming coyotes. Make sure your yard isn't, again, with picking up the fruit, cleaning up around bird feeders, securing your garbage. Recology is a great resource. If you find that your garbage is getting pulled out of the can at night, you can contact Recology and they'll work with you on securing your bins. And if you're having you know, concerns about coyotes visiting your yard and you're not sure what the problem is, you can fill out our coyote yard assessment online. And, you know, we can help guide you and help you find what you need to get rid of to make it less welcoming, or what you need to add to make it less welcoming. And again, please report all illegal feeding to us. And then I'm going to leave this last page with information of how you can contact us. So again, we do record all sightings. So you can enter a coyote sighting online at sfanimalcare.org. Or you can call us at 415-554-9400 if you're having an emergency or there's sick or injured wildlife and you need an animal control officer to come out. And the rest of it's self-explanatory. We're at 1419 Bryant Street, and you can use that QR code if it's easier to get to our webpage. Thank you all for coming.
Hi, everybody. I have some questions that I'm going to be sharing with our panelists here, and looking at who might be the most relevant one to answer this. I also wanted to welcome Barbara Shammy from Rec and Park. She's also with us. There she is. So we have a variety of questions to go through. First one is easy. We are recording this. I will put it on the Animal Care and Control website that you can reach via the QR code. That should be up tomorrow. So if there's anyone that missed this and wants to see it, we'll definitely have that ready for you. Question from Glenn. Given that we can't stop some people from feeding the coyotes, what can be done about their growing boldness around humans? Do you want to start that one, Kelly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what you can do is haze them. So if you see coyotes that are hanging around your houses or neighborhoods that shouldn't be there and seeming too comfortable, I really recommend hazing them, especially the more people that haze them. Really, you're just training a coyote, much like you train a dog to get off your couch or something. So you just want to let him know that he's not welcome there. It's not friendly there. And as long as he's there, he's going to be uncomfortable. The more you haze, the more often you haze them, the better off it and the faster it will work. So I definitely recommend that. Yeah, it is hard to get people to stop feeding once they're feeding. It's a tough thing. But I would turn them in, certainly, if animal care and control gives them some notices and eventually starts, if they still continue feeding after they've been warned, then they can start being cited eventually. Hopefully that will start making an impression on them. But I know it's very difficult to catch all the feeders.
Amy, do you want to talk about some of our past experience with law enforcement and feeding coyotes?
Sure. Well, we've had several people feeding coyotes, and what I will say is, I think for the most part, folks are responsive. And when we issue that warning, I would say most do take it seriously. When I find that when people are feeding, they think they're helping the coyotes. And I can tell you the coyotes do not need help. They can find their own food. They're very good at it. But again, people are trying to help. And so once we, can actually get to these people and educate them on how you're actually harming this animal. Because by you feeding them, they're expecting food from people now. And this is when it becomes a dangerous situation and somebody gets nipped. And, once someone gets nipped, it's kind of the end of the line for that coyote. And yeah, I mean, report it to us. We will go out every time. If you know somebody who's feeding, if you see them drive away in a car, send us the license plate. We will investigate.
It is interesting too that the chart that Amy talked about, that the study done by Tally Caspi really reinforced what we thought was happening all along, is that there's so much human feeding in this city that it's really altered the behavior of coyotes in some cases, in many cases, to have the vast majority of their diet be chicken says a lot. And that's getting them conditioned to come near people looking for more chicken. So it's something we're all addressing. And that's what Amy's shared, that you should definitely call us if you know someone is feeding. Definitely report that to us.
Yeah, and I'll add, like I said, I believe this is a community problem. Just as a resident myself of San Francisco, with pets, with children, like, this is my problem as a resident, right? If you see it, you got to report it. It's the only way to help it, or clean up the trash. I think we all have a part we can do to help keep ourselves and each other safe.
There's a lot of tips on our website, and I know on Project Coyote's website too. Just things to look at. And as Amy mentioned before, the yard assessment, is something that interesting that you can look at and see if maybe there's something you're missing about your yard or yards in your neighborhood that may be attracting the coyotes and making them feel welcome. And that's not what we want. We want them to be out of the neighborhoods, out of your hair, and keeping to where they need to be, eating gophers, which is their second most popular diet choice. Kelly, there's a follow-up about the hazing, that there are a lot of reports of coyotes not reacting to hazing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's usually, well, I can say it's almost always down to the fact that people aren't being aggressive enough about it. And I don't mean aggressive in the sense that you have to hurt the coyotes at all, but I mean assertive enough that it's mostly about the energy that you have when, much like when you're dealing with any animals, animals are experts at reading energy and understanding when they need to be scared. So you just to let them know that you're targeting them and that you're serious and that and escalate it if they're not reacting. So the urban coyotes are definitely stickier than what I call sticky than compared to like the rural ones on the ranch I live at, who have you can't get close to them because in order to survive in an urban area, they have to get somewhat desensitized to people. That doesn't mean habituated or aggressive. It means in order to survive, they can't overreact every time they see a person or hear a noise or something like that. They would never be able to live like that. So they have to get somewhat complacent being around humans, which is fine and understandable. But when they get blasé about it, you just have to up the ante, meaning it's a lot harder to haze an urban coyote than a rural coyote. So that might mean getting more novel scare tactics, like coyotes are neophobic. So if they see something they haven't seen before, that they're going to react to that. They're going to be scared of it. So whatever that looks like, whether it's what works actually pretty good is if you carry a trash bag in your pocket or something and you see a coyote, you whip that out, get air in it and flip it around. Chase the coyote a little bit with that. And I don't mean chase it in a corner. I mean, just move towards it till it's moving away from you. That will be scary to them because they're not used to seeing that. They're not used to hearing. Those little alarms you can carry are probably maybe more effective than a whistle. Like the storm whistles are great, but coyotes could be a little more used to those, things like that. But once they move, the most important part is they're going to run away from you a little bit, but they're going to stop and look back. That's when you have to continue and upgrade the hazing until they leave the entire area. And that's when you've made your impression on them.
Kelly, if I can just add for me, making eye contact is a big factor.
Absolutely.
You know, I've never had to use anything to haze a coyote, even when I'm hiking with my kids, but eye contact, you know, clapping the hands and saying, get out of here a couple times usually works. And then if I need to follow it up, I'm walking towards them like I walk towards my kids when they've done something like 10 times that I've asked them not to, you know, just eye contact and I mean it, you know. And that usually works for me.
If you want
Exactly.
to
That's
see,
a great. Oh, go ahead, Deb.
I was just going to say, if you want to see examples of hazing in action, we have videos on our website. Follow the QR code and you'll see Project Coyote in action. They've got some new videos about how to haze and how to more aggressively haze. Also from the Presidio Trust, we have a video of how to haze from our partners there. So I would check it out. I mean, it shows very good videos of how to do it, make you more comfortable with it.
Yeah, and Amy's right. The eye contact's really important. They have to know that you're targeting them and that you're looking at them. And also the good analogy that Amy used is pretend that you've asked your kids to do something 10 times and they haven't listened. That's the kind of energy you want to take forward when hazing a sticky coyote.
Now we've got some questions about just attacks on dogs. I know there's a lot of apprehension in San Francisco about the coyotes and interacting with dogs. I know that our partners at Rec and Park, Barbara and Christopher, have worked on a variety of ways to keep people and their dogs safe and taking proactive measures to make sure that they are safe. Do you guys, can you talk about that, Christopher and Barbara? I mean, Barbara has a coyote outreach team that is very effective, and Christopher has worked on getting parks closed, which we know can be frustrating to residents, but if it keeps people safe and their dogs safe, it's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk a little bit about park closures, and then also a variety of different approaches that we take to decrease denning locations. So when there is activity, for instance, at Corona Heights is one of our generally a hot spot because there's ample habitat there for them to den at. And there are trails that we're able to keep open and close, still allowing park users to go from one section of the park to another. We try as best as we can to still allow for that, but recognizing what the animal's behavior is, we keep an eye on it. We reach out regularly to ACC. We're in constant communication about that. We send our staff out looking to see if we can find dens. And when we see that they are there, and there are a number of reports of coyotes interacting with people and trying to escort dogs away. And when it reaches a certain threshold is when we decide to close that area down. And then elsewhere as well, we don't generally close entire parks. We close areas where the denning is occurring, and to ensure that people are safe and the animals are safe as well, and that our pets are safe in addition to that. We put up signs as well. We have signs regularly in areas where there are active coyotes, just ensuring that we're giving as much or reaching out to the community as best possible so that newcomers are aware that there are coyotes in the area. And then those of us that frequent parks more regularly are aware of what's happening there. And then we also have different levels of signage as well. So we have just a general sign that we put out. And then once there's denning and we elevate things to closure, we also put that signage up as well. And as Deb had mentioned, sometimes that is a bit controversial because people feel that, you know, the parks are for people, but we try as best to manage our parks both for our use and for wildlife as well, because they are part of our environment as well. And then Barbara, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about our outreach and or if I missed anything in that synopsis.
Yeah, hi everyone. So we work closely with ACC, and as Christopher mentioned, we do a lot to make sure our park infrastructure and our signs and everything are in place that will help alert the public about what's going on in our parks. In addition to that, we have a coyote outreach team, and they're part-time. They're hired through Rec and Park during pupping season through dispersal season. So basically through spring and fall, and they go out to our park. So if we have reports of elevated incidences in a park, we send out 2 public outreach ambassadors to table and do education and talk to park goers. It's really great because there's a lot of misconceptions about coyotes, and this team can go and clear those up. But it's also great because we get to hear from the public and get a better understanding of kind of their fears and concerns, and then we take them back to the team at ACC and the Rec Park team, and we can discuss how we can move forward and resolve these issues. So it's a really great program that we've been doing for the last few years, and it helps us kind of interact and have a better understanding of what's going on the ground. And one other thing that our team does is they also work with the Rec Park staff and park partners. So like some folks probably know about the incident at the Botanical Gardens last year. And so this year we'll be training all new Botanical Gardens gardeners, letting them know about how best to report coyote incidences, when to flag escalating behavior, just so that we're all better informed and talking to each other.
One of the things that Amy touched on during that presentation, her portion of the presentation, were the sightings and observation reports. And again, you can follow the QR code, follow the link, go to our website, and you can report your own sightings and observations What happens with those? We get that information from you and we take it very seriously. We read through each one. We download pictures. We appreciate the photographs that give us a better understanding of what's happening. And we share those with the appropriate people. If it's on Rec and Park property, we immediately share those reports with Rec and Park. If there's something that we need to address, like someone believes a den site may be in a neighbor's yard, the officers go out, our animal control officers will go check it out. They'll see what's happening and if there's some merit to that report. So we're constantly looking at your information that you're sending to us. And we value that so much. We meet once a month, all of our departments meet and we discuss these reports. We look at developing hotspots. We talk about things that we can do to keep people and their pets safe. And we just come up with strategies, but it's something that we're constantly looking at and doing. So we appreciate each and every one of you who take the time to send us those reports. And we ask you to continue doing that. And if you haven't done it, please start. We definitely use that information. Researchers also use that information, putting together things like this diet study that we've learned so much for. So you're very much contributing to the safety of the city and to research by giving us your observations. So thank you for that.
Deb, I wanted to add to that as well. I think
Yeah.
that is really key. The general public are really, you're our ears and eyes a lot of the time because we can't be out there all the time. And that also ensures that we're able to dispatch staff to put out signs if there's some activity that is seen in a specific location that we don't have signage. That's in real time that ACC reaches out to various agencies and for us, the Rec and Park Department, and we follow through with that as well. This isn't a vacuum where the message is out there, hey, this has happened. We communicate back as well and ensure that ACC knows that we've put signs up and or that we're communicating with the public in a way that it benefits all of us as well. And I wanted to say something as well about feeding. I live over by City College and I see people put food out a lot of the time. And when I see that, I take the time to talk to people about it. It seems to me we like to recycle food or repurpose it. And what I see people doing is that they don't want to throw the food out because they're wasting it. So they'd rather put it out for wildlife. I think, that's a disservice to wildlife. Again, what everyone has been saying here, to put your leftover food, your fruit, whatever it be, in your green bin, get rid of it. Don't put it out front for wildlife because that's doing no one any service. And you're inviting potentially coyotes into the neighborhood as well.
Green bins. Ecology has them and they'll help you with green bins if you need them. We have a tip. Someone's been carrying an umbrella to scare coyotes away on walks. That's a good method, isn't it, Kelly?
Yeah, umbrellas are awesome because they're not used to seeing them and they come out suddenly. They're scary, right? If someone's opening that, that's an awesome example of a tool that someone can use. I love that example.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good tip. We got a lot of questions about hunting gophers. And as you saw, pocket gophers, one of the primary parts of a coyote diet. We do have some pictures that we just got that I'll be sharing. I'll put them up on our website so you can see coyotes in action. Kind of gruesome, but it's nature. They are eating what they should be eating. So good to know that. Any more questions from our participants? Any more information that our panelists think we should let the public know about? No. We could be wrapping this up early. And as you saw, you still have our information up. If you have any questions to follow up on after this, please send us questions, send us information. We'll get you answers. We'll talk to you, we'll find out what's going on out there, and we'll do what we can to help solve problems and respond to complaints. Our animal control officers are out there every day to help animals and to help people. So we're here for you. And we really appreciate you listening to us tonight. And we want to thank Kelly from Project Coyote with her great coyote information, and our partners at Rec and Park that we work with, like Barbara and Christopher said, every single day we work closely together. Amy, any final words from you, from our deputy director?
We might have one more question
Oh,
coming in.
okay.
Let's just give it another moment.
One coming in.
Think so.
Message about coyote activity on our street. Thank you. Send that in.
There's a question about coyotes with mange.
We don't treat wildlife. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Yes, we know about the coyotes that are out there that are presenting with mange right now. We're keeping an eye on them. We've talked to some researchers who have said that they've seen coyotes in the wild heal up just fine from that. Again, we won't try to trap or catch a coyote unless they're incapacitated. Again, it's stressful to them, and we can't keep them confined and treat them through the course of mange. It's inhumane, it's too stressful to them, but also it's not feasible. So again, what the researchers say is that they tend to recover well from that. So we're keeping an eye on it. When we get calls, we'll go out and check, just see how they're doing. They're still mobile, they're still able to hunt, then they're fine. Same with, the coyotes with a broken leg. A lot of times they end up being just fine.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can heal from. Horrific injuries I've seen coyotes heal from on their own, and they really don't do well in captivity. They're a very high stress animal, and it separates them from their family group, which, as we've mentioned here tonight, they have super strong family bonds. So when you release them, you hopefully you're releasing them in the same spot so they can rejoin their family. But it's ideally to let them heal on their own if they can, and to not take them into captivity unless you absolutely have to. And I will say that although it's been proven, and they've done studies on bobcats, and it's proven in bobcats and mountain lions that the incidence of mange are directly related to their ingestion of rodenticides through eating, so through secondary poisonings of rodenticides. That studies have proven that, people using rodenticides and poisoning rodents and small animals, that ends up in the systems of mountain lions and bobcats, and it can lead to mange. And in the cases of mountain lions and bobcats, it can be lethal. So we know it's directly correlated to that. It hasn't been proven in coyotes. They haven't done studies to prove or disprove it. Many of the experts believe it's not the case with coyotes because of just the difference in the way that canines versus felines react to rodenticides. But I'm not 100% convinced. So, and like I said, they haven't bothered to study it to my knowledge. So we do know that rodenticides is horrible for all types of wildlife, and it doesn't really lower the number of rats and mice anyways. In fact, those poison bait boxes are an attractant themselves. So it's best to not use rodenticides and use sanitation and exclusion as your methods of preventing rodent infestations on properties and businesses and things like that. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a thought.
There's a question about St. Mary's Park. We mentioned that before as an area that took a lot of special attention last year. The coyotes at St. Mary's Park are reproducing. Isn't there a greater threat as the pack grows? I know we haven't quite talked about the plans for that yet. Christopher, do you have any insight into that, if there's still some issues like there were last year?
Unfortunately, we're anticipating there still will be issues. If you live near St. Mary's Park, you can see that we've been working to clear the bank that has a lot of cotoneaster and other non-native vegetation in there. The growth of those plants and the density of it makes it ideal for denning. And our approach to that is to have a greater presence there. We've opened up sight lines and widened areas that were kind of social paths in there. But we've been working to cut the vegetation, remove vegetation from the site. We'll follow up doing herbicide treatments on the shrubs that are growing in there to discourage their continuation. Those plants in there, they have a very successful reproduction rate. If you know what the cotoneaster is, lots of seed. So this is something that we're going to need to maintain for years. But being a neighbor there as well, we close the fields there as appropriate when coyotes are certainly much more active. And once pupping season is in swing and prior to dispersal generally. And it seems last year was a relatively large window of time. And we do that based on the length of time that we keep it closed is to ensure the safety of the general public. And with the proximity to the baseball diamonds there, the play fields, the potential picnicking there, it's a tricky spot for us. But our goal is to discourage denning, specifically where it has been. And the coyotes will find another location to den nearby, which then there'll be other circumstances we'll need to navigate if it's on rec park property. But we are trying to take a more aggressive approach with the removal of vegetation there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, and maybe Kelly or Deb want to speak more to this, or Amy. There's not necessarily a greater threat of the coyotes because they're reproducing. The alpha pair does tend to display, protective behavior, but I wouldn't say that there's an increased threat to the public.
I wanted to mention something too that we keep track of here at Animal Care and Control is the amount of dead coyotes that we pick up from the streets. It's rarely off the streets. It's mostly in the streets. But we pick up between 20 and 30 dead coyotes each year. I think the public should know that when you think about the amount of litters and pups and coming about. There is another thing. I know Fish and Wildlife once said that a coyote predator are cars, and that's true. We do pick up quite a few. So that's quite a few coyotes that do not make it each year because of being hit by a car. Just an interesting fact for us. We have someone that writes about a coyote in Chinatown. What should we do with them? I'm not sure if you're seeing a coyote in Chinatown. Send in a sightings report. They've been seen in many areas of the city, but definitely report that to us. And if it's near you, haze it, scare it away. Don't make it feel welcome. That leads into the next question. They have a coyote that has turned the nearby neighborhood into its territory. It will hang out in front yards. It's not aggressive. We don't necessarily have means to discourage it. Do we just let it live there? We as in everyone who lives and walks through there? Amy, is that a situation where someone should call us? Coyotes sleeping in the yards?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a great situation to do a yard assessment, see what's happening in the yards. It's also a good opportunity to haze. One of the things when I've been out just watching an area with a coyote before is I probably saw about 30 people walk by looking at their phone before anybody even noticed the coyote was laying on the grass 5 feet from them. So you know, again, making eye contact goes a long way. So I eventually walked up to the coyote, looking at it, and got a perk up like, oh no, she sees me, and then it got up and left. But yeah, I mean, everybody can do their part to haze, clean up the yards. We put out information on Nextdoor. So if you want to let us know what neighborhood that is, we can target some information out there. Is that right, Deb? You can do that?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We have some questions about treating the coyotes with mange with meatballs. Amy, we just recently talked a lot about that.
Yeah, so again, that's feeding a coyote. We don't want to do that. Also, it's very frowned upon by Fish and Wildlife. To them, it goes, it's right under that code with the harassing wildlife, which is the misdemeanor that we spoke about earlier. And you know, there's no guarantee that that target animal is going to get that meatball. So we don't do that, and we don't want the public doing that either. And like Kelly said, it's amazing what wild animals can heal from.
And yes, there is, oh, Barbara's answering, there will be a recording of this presentation available on our website. And someone mentioned arm signaling, that we have seen coyotes. I'm not sure what that means, if that means a component of hazing where you can wave your arms. Absolutely. I think Kelly would approve of that, right, Kelly?
Yes, yes.
Wave your arms. If you,
Slap.
there's,
Yes, yell at
Yeah,
them.
woo.
Coyote,
Yes,
go
there we go.
away. Yeah,
Audrey, if you have clarification of that question, just pop it in the Q&A and we'll figure it out. Someone says they're restating that they think that the takeaway from this talk in context with their encounters with coyotes, making sure they do the right thing in this scenario because we're not encountering this particular animal in a wild park area. So it sounds like someone is maybe taking a hike or walking a trail and they want to know what happens when a coyote's following them or comes out of the brush. I'm hoping I'm getting that right.
Deb, they have a question before that.
Oh, they did?
We have a coyote that essentially has turned the nearby neighborhood to its territory. It'll just hang out in front of yards. It's not aggressive. And we don't necessarily.
Got it. So it's not in the wild park, it's in the neighborhood. So we kind of, Amy talked about that.
Yeah, if they're in a space that they should not be, then yes, please haze it. And you know, if they're in a space that they should be, a nice green space that's, you know, not right near the path that you're hiking on, and they're minding their own business, let them be. We let them be when they're acting appropriate, and we haze when they're not. So anything to add, Kelly?
yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. We, yeah. Punish bad behavior, reward good behavior.
Works for everyone, everything. One thing that people have had some success with are water scarecrows that are motion activated that suddenly shoot out a spray of water. I mean, you've had success with people using those, right, Kelly?
Yeah, those work real well in yards and things like that. The raccoons like them though, so that's a little bit of a, they don't mind them at all. But yeah, those will work good to scare coyotes away. So those are a good option.
And a question, what is hazing? Meaning shouting?
Hazing just means scaring coyotes away, and that may involve shouting. That may be part of it. Raising your arms, yelling at the coyote. It's just making the coyote feel unwanted and scared, and so it'll move off and go away from you or the place that you're trying to protect. It's just reinstilling their natural wariness of people, which can get a little they can get a little complacent in urban areas around people, and we want to instill natural fear of them.
We don't want them to feel welcome or like they're part of our lives. We want them to go away. So we all need to do our part to make sure that happens and to help that happen. and it's not that hard to do. So we're hoping we empowered you with some information about how to feel comfortable doing that. Any more questions from anyone? Pop them in the Q&A.
And I'd like to
Yes.
say that anybody can haze from you know, an 8-year-old person to a, you know, 10-year-old kid. Anybody can haze. It's all about energy. It has nothing to do with your size or how you are as a person, how physically fit you are. None of that is required. It's just the energy that you project.
Yeah, one of our animal control officers taught a bunch of very young children how to haze, and they loved it, making
Oh, kids
noise.
love it.
Yeah, and they went home and
Yeah.
taught the rest of the family how, but
Kids
what's
are the
more fun
best.
than, yeah, making noise and screaming and waving your arms? It's fun.
Yeah.
Another question. I see them often when walking in Golden Gate Park and keep space from them, but do they ever attack, or it's okay to trust that they'll stay away? Do you want to address that, Kelly? It sounds like
Yeah,
maybe some escorting.
you can almost always they will stay away. Coyotes, just to like I said earlier, it's so incredibly rare that they will attack people. We want to keep it that way. We tend to hear about a lot in the media because it is so rare that even small little bites will get nationwide coverage. So it makes it seem more imposing and a bigger problem to people than it actually is, but it's extraordinarily rare. And usually when they occur, it's a small bite, very superficial, but we want to keep it that way. So, and if you see coyotes in Golden Gate Park being coyotes, just leave them be. They need to have some place where they can be coyotes and relax. And as long as they're not causing problems, we want to reward that behavior by leaving them alone so they know that they're doing right. The only time we harass them is when they're in places they shouldn't be, or if they're approaching us aggressively or something like that. But like I said earlier too, they may follow people if you have a dog with you from a distance just to make sure you're leaving their territory. But that is not an aggressive stance. It's just a natural behavior of coyotes.
Tamara asked how many coyotes are presently in San Francisco? How many were in SF in 2020, 1980, 1960? We don't know those numbers from 1960, 1980, or 2020, but we do know through a recent study also done by researcher Tally Caspi that there are approximately 100 DNA profiles of coyotes that she found in San Francisco. Doesn't mean that all of those coyotes are still alive, but we think that the population stays at about 100. But that without a way of doing a very expensive collaring study, any kind of research on the population, we don't know for sure, and we probably won't know for sure. Any more questions? Oh. When the kid was bitten last year, the city then closed the botanical garden the next day. What did they do to the coyote? Do you want me to address that, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I know the basics, but I wasn't here during all that.
Okay. Our protocol is that if a human is bitten, that we do call the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that has jurisdiction over bites of wildlife to humans and coyotes to humans. What they then do is call in the USDA, the APHIS division, and they do lethally remove a coyote that has bitten a human. Not necessarily a bite, say a person getting between their dog and a coyote, trying to help their dog in a situation like that, but an absolute bite straight to a human. And that's only happened once in San Francisco, and that happened last year. And that coyote was lethally removed. And it was proven that it was the right coyote through DNA. So that's what happened to that coyote. It's an unfortunate incident, but the child was fine. The child didn't want harm to come to the coyote. But it's one of those things. It just was an unusual, very unusual incident. First time that's happened in San Francisco that we know of in our records going back 20 something years. Anyone want to add anything to that?
And I'll add, there was a question, how do they know they had the right coyote? And when somebody gets bit, they swab it for DNA, and that way they can match it to the coyote that they later killed.
Our officers are trained to immediately respond to a scene of a bite, even if it's a bite between with a person who's protecting their dog. They got between a coyote and their dog. They will go, they will swab. And in this case, they were able to swab the little girl and then match the DNA. California Department of Fish and Wildlife matched the DNA. So we know that the right one is no longer with us. What's everyone's take on the two that just recently explored the Muni Tunnel? I think they were just looking around. They saw something interesting. If anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Are you thinking about the bat?
I think they were just curious.
Oh, what they were doing?
Yeah, there were two just walking around. It kind of looked like the video you shared, Kelly, with the badger.
Yeah.
Just like
yeah.
tunnels. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a underpass so that wildlife could use it to get, across the road. And there have been instances of quite a few instances of coyotes and badgers hunting cooperatively in the wild, but that's the first video evidence we've ever seen of a coyote and a badger just hanging out like buddies, which I thought was pretty adorable. So, and that looked like a young coyote, and it looked probably a young coyote out on its own for the first time. And they get lonely. They're social animals. It found a friendly badger and they became buddies. So whether they hunt together or not, I don't know, but it's pretty cute.
We haven't gotten any more reports of the coyotes in the Muni Tunnel. Our officers frequently find, well, maybe not frequently, but they do occasionally have to find dogs in the tunnel. And that can be an interesting process, but coyotes, I don't know. They must have not liked it in there. How do they know they have the right coyote? I think that goes back to the coyote in Botanical Garden. It was matched through DNA. Were any others harmed? Yes, 2 others were harmed. And did they have to kill or hurt more than one coyote to find the right one whose DNA matched? This isn't our process. We're not in charge of the removal process, but we do, we have to call the correct officials when these things happen. And then this leaves our jurisdiction. We don't have say after that. But I think what they need to do is take out what coyotes they found in the vicinity of the incident. And that's what they did that night. So again, not our process, but our job is to keep the public safe as well as animals safe. So it was something that had to happen. Luckily, no one was hurt. No, the little girl wasn't hurt seriously, but we wish these things did not happen. Believe us. Do you have anything to add to that, Amy?
No, I mean, I think that's why, we go out and we've gotten ourselves trained on how to swab for the DNA, so that, it can be a process, once we turn it over to them, we can help their process, in finding the right individual, and doing as little damage to the rest of the population as possible.
I mean, we're here for animals. We don't want to see any animals harmed, but sometimes as part of our work, something like this can happen. We hope it doesn't happen again anytime soon, that's for sure. Any more questions? We've reached 7 o'clock. There's no more questions, then we're going to thank you all for coming and learning more about coyotes again. Use our contact information to send us any questions you have or you think about after this. We're here. We're here to answer your questions and we're here to help animals. If you need us for an animal-related emergency, You see the number on our contact information, 415-554-9400. Our officers will come out and help you. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Kelly, Amy, Barbara, and Christopher.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.